When the stage lights went down, nobody could believe it. In that moment, nobody knew that Elvis Presley's microphone was trembling in his hand. While 20,000 people applauded, the king of rock and roll collapsed to his knees backstage. But the real shock was the letter he pulled from his pocket. Las Vegas, July 1970. Elvis Presley had just finished his 60-minute performance on the massive stage of the International Hotel. His white jumpsuit, covered in sparkling stones, was drenched in sweat, his chest heaving. As his fans screamed wildly, he just tried to smile. But there was something in his eyes, an emptiness, as if part of his soul wasn't there. Security guards rushed him to his dressing room. His steps grew heavier as he walked down the corridor. He was struggling to breathe. The moment the door closed, Elvis collapsed into a chair. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Only one name was written on it: to Gladys. His mother had died 12 years ago. This is where everything changed, because that letter was a confession Elvis had written in his own hand. Elvis opened the envelope. A yellowed piece of paper emerged. It began in his own handwriting. "Mom, everyone loves me, but I don't know who I am anymore." His hands trembled as he read the lines. He'd written this letter 3 days ago, half asleep, half under the influence of medication. After finishing it, he'd cried for hours. There was a knock at the door. "Elvis, press conference in 10 minutes." He didn't answer. He put the letter back in the envelope and slipped it into his pocket. He looked in the mirror. The man staring back was familiar but foreign. He was 35 years old, but his eyes belonged to someone who was 50, tired, fragile, alone. 3 hours earlier, just before going on stage, his manager's words still echoed in his ears. "Elvis, you gotta be perfect tonight. We need to renew the contract. $3 million are on the table." $3 million. That was the number spinning in Elvis's head. But what really bothered him was something else. Do I want this money, or does the Colonel want it? But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet, because the visitor who came to Elvis's dressing room that night would change his life forever. The door slowly opened. When Elvis looked up and saw who was standing there, he froze in shock. It was Priscilla, his ex-wife. They'd divorced a year ago, but that silent pain between them still remained. "Elvis," Priscilla said. Her voice was trembling. "I need to talk to you." Elvis stood up. "Priscilla, this isn't a good time. I've got a press conference, then Lisa Marie is sick." Priscilla's eyes welled up. "The doctors say it could be serious. She's going in for tests tomorrow morning." Elvis's world seemed to slip from under his feet. His daughter, his only real connection, the only person outside the stage who gave him a reason to live. "What kind of illness?" His voice was hoarse. "They don't know yet, but you need to be there, Elvis. Your daughter needs you." Just then, the door opened again. Colonel Tom Parker burst in. The short, heavy-set man, puffing on a cigar, was as authoritarian as always. "Elvis, what are you doing? The press is waiting. Move it." Priscilla glared at the colonel with anger. "Tom, did you hear me? Lisa Marie is sick. Elvis needs to get back to Los Angeles." The colonel waved his cigar through the air. "Impossible. Elvis has 4 more shows this week. According to the contract." "Shut up!" Elvis's voice shook the entire room. Both Priscilla and the colonel looked at him in shock. Elvis rarely yelled. "My daughter is sick, and you're talking to me about contracts?" The colonel tried to keep his cool. "Elvis, calm down. Think rationally. Priscilla can take Lisa Marie to the doctor. You finish your work here, then—" "No." Elvis's voice was firm. "I'll be in Los Angeles tomorrow morning." Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail, because the decision Elvis made wasn't just a father's decision. This was his first rebellion against the biggest chains in his life. The colonel's face contorted. He approached Elvis and began to speak in a low voice. "Elvis, listen to me. I got you here because of me. I managed your career. If you cancel these shows—" "What?" Elvis took a step toward him. "What are you going to do, Tom? Fire me? Please do. Maybe then I'll be free." Silence fell over the room. Priscilla stared at Elvis in amazement. The colonel's face had turned bright red. For the first time in years, Elvis was standing up to him. The colonel tried to choose his words. You're emotional right now. You'll regret this tomorrow. Maybe. Elvis pulled that letter from his pocket and held it to the colonel. But read this letter. I wrote it for my mama. I promised her. I told her I wouldn't let her keep me away from family. But you've been keeping me away from her for years. Now you're trying to keep me away from my daughter, too. Not this time, Tom. Not this time. The colonel didn't take the letter. He shot him a cold look and walked out of the room. He slammed the door. Priscilla approached Elvis and placed her hand on his shoulder. Thank you, she said softly. Lisa Marie will be so happy you're there. Elvis lowered his head. I've been a bad father, Priscilla. I'm always on stage, always on tour. My daughter is growing up and I'm not there. It's not late, Elvis. Priscilla's voice was sincere. It's never too late. You won't believe this, but the real shock came later that night because the phone call Elvis received would take things to another dimension. Elvis returned to his hotel suite at 3 in the morning. The TV was on, but the sound was muted. An old movie was playing on screen, one of his own movies, Jailhouse Rock. That young, energetic, dream-filled Elvis from 1957 was on the screen. When he looked in the mirror now, he couldn't see that kid. The phone rang. Who could be calling him at 3 in the morning? Elvis picked up the receiver. Hello? Elvis Presley? The voice wasn't familiar. Female, young-sounding. Yes, this is Elvis. Who is this? My name is Sarah. I'm a fan of yours, but that's not why I'm calling. I need to tell you something. Elvis's hair stood on end. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. What matters is this. Colonel Parker is cheating you, Elvis. He's not your manager. He's your jailer. What are you talking about? Elvis's heart began to race. Have you ever read your contracts? Really read them? The colonel takes 50% of your earnings, which is an unprecedented rate. But worse, he's making gambling debts in your name with your money. Elvis grabbed his hair with his hands. How do you know this? I'm friends with someone who works in the colonel's office. I've seen the documents, Elvis. You're making millions, but most of the money isn't coming to you. It's going to the colonel and his debts. This is impossible. But something stirred inside Elvis, questions he'd been asking for years but never dared to answer. Elvis, tomorrow morning go see a lawyer in Memphis. His name is David Goldman. He'll explain everything. But be careful. Don't tell the colonel anything. He's a very powerful man and... The line went dead. Elvis slowly put the phone back. He sat in the room. He thought for hours. His mind was in chaos. What you're seeing now is nothing, because what Elvis discovered the next morning would expose the biggest scandal of his career. The next morning, Elvis flew to Los Angeles on his private jet. He visited Priscilla and Lisa Marie at the hospital. His daughter was tired but looked okay. The doctors said they'd run a few more tests. Elvis held his daughter's hand and told his stories. Lisa Marie smiled when her father was there. That smile was the most beautiful thing Elvis had seen all week. But his mind was still on that phone call, what Sarah had said, the colonel's lies, the contracts. After leaving the hospital, he flew to Memphis. David Goldman's office was in a small building downtown. The lawyer was in his 50s, wore glasses, and a serious man. He wasn't surprised when Elvis introduced himself. I was expecting you, Mr. Presley. Goldman invited him in. Please, have a seat. Sarah told me about you. Elvis got straight to the point. What do you know about the colonel? Goldman took a deep breath. He pulled out a thick file from his desk. Mr. Presley, I have very bad news for you. The contracts Colonel Parker made with you are completely illegal. He's taking 50% of your earnings, which is an unprecedented rate. But worse, he's making gambling debts in your name with your money. Elvis shook his head. He couldn't speak. And there's one more thing. Goldman pulled out another document. Colonel Tom Parker isn't actually Tom Parker. His real name is Andreas Cornelius van Kuyk. He's Dutch. He entered America illegally. He doesn't have a passport. That's why he never took you on international tours, because he can't leave the country.
Elvis's world fell apart. 20 years. He'd been working with this man for 20 years, and it was all a lie. What should I do? His voice sounded like a child's. You need to break the contract, Goldman was determined. We need to go to court. With these documents, we'll win. But Elvis, the colonel, will fight. He's powerful. He has connections. This won't be easy. Elvis stood up. He looked out the window. Life flowed on in the Memphis streets. People were going to their jobs, their homes, living normal lives. Elvis had missed that normal life. I'll fight, he finally said, for my daughter, for myself, for my mama's memory. You haven't seen the biggest comeback yet, because Elvis's decision would change not just his own life, but the entire music industry. 2 weeks later, the news was everywhere. Elvis Presley is
2 weeks later, the news was everywhere. Elvis Presley is suing his manager. The media went crazy. Some supported Elvis. Some accused him of being ungrateful. But Elvis was determined. The court process lasted for months. The colonel fought. He brought lawyers. He presented evidence. But Goldman's documents were strong. At every hearing, a new scandal emerged. The colonel's gambling debts, fake contracts, lies, manipulation. During this process, Elvis didn't stop performing. On the contrary, he began giving more passionate performances, because now he was singing for himself. He knew where his money was going. He was spending more time with his daughter. His relationship with Priscilla was beginning to improve. One night, at his home in Graceland, after putting Lisa Marie to bed, Elvis went to his mother's room. The room had been maintained for years, but was empty. He looked at the photos on the walls. A young woman, beautiful smile. Gladys Presley. She had loved her son so much. She had tried to protect him. Elvis pulled that letter from his pocket. It was still there. He began reading it. Mom, everyone loves me, but I don't know who I am anymore. On stage, I'm Elvis Presley, but at home, I don't know who I am. If you were here, you'd show me the right path. You'd teach me to be free. Now, I miss you, Mom. Every day I miss you. But I promise you, I'm going to break the chains now. I'm going to be free now. I'm going to live as your son. I'm going to live my own life. Elvis folded the letter. He threw it into the fireplace. The paper slowly burned. The smoke rose up the chimney. Elvis looked out the window at the sky. The stars were shining. Mom, he whispered, I'm free now. The court finally ruled in Elvis's favor. He separated from Colonel Parker. He began managing his own career, but what really changed was Elvis's inside. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was a father. He was a man. He was himself. And every time he went on stage, he was no longer singing for others, but for himself. When 20,000 people applauded, he wasn't just smiling anymore. He was feeling. The king of rock and roll had been reborn, but this time on his own terms. And Lisa Marie stood at the side of the stage, watching her father. She was proud of him.